Awesome. Cool. So
We're
we're live
live?
now.
Yes, we are live now, Big. That's good.
Yes, we're live now. Yes.
Welcome everyone once again to this live podcast series on emotional well-being, but it's more freedom of free spirited. And the uniqueness of this series is we are all one. The reason why we are doing this podcast series is we are all one. First, let's acknowledge that. And everybody deal with every single different concerns, issues that human bring along with them. So today we are going to touch on a topic which is absolutely an important topic of a human being, where we sort of come into contact or some into context some or the other time of your journey. And that could be any kind of addictions that we develop or we create for ourselves. As human creatures we always seek, but knowingly or unknowingly, we do fall into some sort of addictions. And today we are going to bring a topic called addictions with one of our real human and real experience that he's going to share with us, and which will resonate with quite a lot of people, and it will resonate for not necessarily for people who are not addicted or addicted, but you can at least uncover what sort of addictions you have. And so let's get into this topic of addictions. But freedom of speech is all about how you become free from all these addictions, how you live your life as a free bird, as a free spirit. So once again, live, we are all one. I'm going to hand over to our beautiful Beck, who is our co-host today. And as she has brought some beautiful topics also in the previous episodes that you saw, which touched on various human aspects of our journey. So today, without any delay, I'm going to put it back to Beck. Beck, over to you to have this lovely conversation today that we are going to touch on a topic.
Thanks, Shailesh. I just want to welcome everybody today for our topic. We are talking into addiction. I'm very honoured to have Paaka Edwards with us. We are going to, he's going to share with us his journey through his addiction. We're going to touch on a few questions that might trigger a few emotions or a few unsettled feelings for our listeners. Please feel free to reach out if you do have any questions during the podcast or at the end. But I am very, very grateful to have Paaka with us today. He is a father, he is a partner, he is a brother, he's an entrepreneur, teacher, and he's an advisor around his journey with addiction. So very big welcome to you, Paaka. So very grateful that you are able to be here with us today as we touch on this topic on our podcast.
Ai, e tika ana. Ko te mea tuatahi ka tukuna aku mihi kia kōrua, kia Shailesh, kia Beck hoki, tēnei te mihi kia kōrua mārunga I tēnei whakatapotoranga o te kōrero nei e pehe ana te āhuatanga o te tinana no reira tēnā kōrua. So my acknowledgements to you both. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into it.
So just before we sort of go into so the nitty-gritty bits, like, would you be able to share with us your experience and journey to start with addiction?
Woo! Okay. Where do I start? So I guess it really starts with, and it might be different for some people, but generally it follows along the same sort of lines. It starts with your environment growing up. It starts with your upbringing, what sort of environment you had around you, and the lifestyle that those people lived. So my parents, their brothers and sisters, grandparents, neighbors, that sort of thing. And in my whānau, in my family, there was a lot of drug use and there was a lot of alcoholism. So growing up, that was just a really normal part of life that us as kids, and there were many, many kids in our whānau, we just kind of saw that as just what you do when you get older. I think probably by the time I was 5, 6, 7 years old is when I started getting quite intrigued about what they were doing. And so I remember very specifically times where me and my closest cousin would get together and we'd go and sneak and we'd try and find the half empty bottles, and we'd sneak those out and we'd drink those, and we'd try and sneak the kaotaka te koha. Kaotaka, hare ki te pata ki tō mama. Aroha mai kai. My tamariki are home, so they might sneak.
Oh, beautiful.
And so that's where it really started for me, is seeing the normalization of overconsumption of vices or things that, you know, made people feel happy or better. So that's the first part I want to bring to light, is your environment, your upbringing, what you saw and what was normal in your surroundings. The second part is trauma. You know, the people say that, you know, marijuana or cigarettes is the gateway to drugs. It's actually trauma. Trauma is the gateway to addictions. And so from before we were even 5 years old, we were subject to lots of trauma from, you know, family conflict, and from the conflicts that our parents would get into with each other or with other people. Constant moving. So that's another thing. If your upbringing's unstable, if there's instability, that's creating trauma. Yeah. So you don't have a proper grounding. You're constantly trying to ground yourself or find your place in the world as a young kid, as a child. And if the longer this happens, the longer you're constantly trying to, you know, make new friends or settle in or those sorts of things, the bigger the trauma is going to be as you get older. So those are the two things that I want to bring up real quickly. As we moved on, I still remember dabbling here and there from 5, 6 years old till my early teens, 11, 12 years old, where I really started enjoying what was happening, enjoying blacking myself out and enjoying numbing myself, really, not really knowing that that's what I was doing, but it just felt normal. It felt like the only way I could break away from what was happening around me is to partake in the things that were normalized for me. So alcohol or marijuana or smoking cigarettes. By the time I was in my mid-teens, methamphetamine was really prominent in my whānau. And so that became a vice that we picked up as well. And not just that, but gambling. Gambling was a massive part. I remember, you know, driving down with the cousins in the back seat and parking outside the pub and waiting for our parents to finish gambling all our weekly money away or whatever. We didn't really know what was going on. We knew something was happening, but later on we realized, so they go and they do this, and sometimes they win and sometimes they don't. And when they don't, it's trouble at home. So that really happened. And because of the trauma that I went through in my upbringing, that made my later teen years really difficult, because I was really trying to find my place in the world with no firm understanding of where I belonged, in terms of my connections with friends and stuff like that. And so the only people that I really connected with were other users. There were other people who would prefer to stay in a dark room and partake in drugs or drink alcohol, binge drink. You know, I'm talking, my whānau were heavy drinkers. So a box of 24 beers is a warm up, you know, that's just to get started. So that's really where it started getting like ramping up for me from my late teens through to my late 20s. And it was all pretty much a blur from there. It was constant ups and downs, constant looking for the next fix, constant looking around and seeing nobody there to support you unless you had something to offer. Oh, look, got us a couple bottles of this. Yay, all the friends are there.
Mm.
But as soon as you've got nothing, nothing to contribute, you don't really have any support around you. And so that pretty much lasted. That was my whole 20s. While I still had in some ways, I had a pretty successful 20s era, if you'll call it that. I managed to join a band and we managed to tour Europe and do over 200 shows across there. I was still a heavy drug addict through that whole time. And I kept it secret from many people for a long time. And even now, I still remember some people coming over who could obviously see the effects in my physical being and saying things like, bro, are you okay? You look really gaunt. You look really skinny. And I would look them dead in the eye and I would say, yeah, I'm all good. I'm all good. No, I'm not touching that stuff. I would lie to their face. And so, you know, you do that enough times and people will stop asking. You do that enough times and people don't trust you. You do that enough times and you lose those friends. And so I went through that whole roller coaster. I went through losing whānau, losing family and losing friends because of my choices and because of my inability to deal with the things that come up in life that make you feel like you need to use. So that's something I want to touch on too, is that when you've been numbing yourself for so long, the only way you can make sense of the world is if you're numb. So say you haven't used for a couple days and an emotional feeling or an emotional trigger happens that you don't know how to deal with because you were never taught or because you were numb when you were going through that in your younger days. The only thing that makes it feel better is to use. Which is why we go back to it. We go, oh my God, I don't know how to deal with the situation. I need to make myself feel better by smoking, gambling. I need a block of chocolate, you know, whatever the vice is that makes people feel comfortable and brush that emotional, that feeling to the side. So that pretty much was my whole 20s. I went through so many ups and downs, and I would find myself at least 3-4 times a year at rock bottom, what I thought was rock bottom. And it happens to many. I've been in drug counseling therapy for a number of years, and every single person I've spoken to has gone through this rock bottom phase. You lose all your money, you've got no money, you've lost all your support. Sometimes you've lost your home, you don't have a car, and you're literally walking the streets with your bags of clothes. So I went through this many times, and it's really disheartening.
I know.
It's really disheartening. Especially,
I want to ask you, just when you said that, what was the trigger point, and when was the trigger point? At what age you realized that this consumption that you were having of various kinds of various things that you didn't realize until it became an addiction, that if you don't have it, you are not feeling good about it. So when you are having it, you're feeling good about it. So you're not realizing that it's addiction. So when was the trigger point that really made you feel that, no, I need to go to a counselor, or I need some help, or I need some support?
Okay. I knew it was an addiction when I was about 20 years old.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. So by the time I was 20 and, I'd been sweating for 2 days because I wasn't feeling how I wanted to feel.
Coming down.
I was like, shit, I'm addicted. I'm sorry for the language. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm addicted. I need to sort this out, but it's not that easy. If your environment and your support people or your friends or your family aren't on the same page as you and don't support you or don't want to confront their own issues, then it's just impossible. So while I acknowledged that it was around 1920, I realized I had some severe addictions, it wasn't until I was 29 that that I hit another rock bottom. It was another rock bottom. Everything came crashing down. By then I had a son. Yep. So my son was a couple years old, and I was still, myself and his mother were still using heavily. And I got into lots of trouble during that time, and we separated. And the only way that the court or the law system was going to allow me to see my son again was if I provided a hair follicle test that was 6 months clean. So that was the only way I could see my son. That was the turning point. Yeah. And so I was living in central Auckland, where I could find anything I wanted within 5 minutes. Yeah, it was just very easy. So my first step was, I need to get out of here. I need to get out of this area, and I need to, try and start fresh. So I contacted a family member who lives in South Auckland, who I know follows a clean path. So I went and stayed with him, but it was a matter of days before we had visitors, and they were offering again. And so I wasn't strong enough at that point. I still thought, yes, I would love some. And we carried on. That was another 3, 4, 5 days. After that, I realized that I couldn't recover. I couldn't be sober in Auckland. That was the turning point, and that I needed to get out of Auckland. And so I was really lucky that a family in Tauranga offered to take me in and to support me through my journey of sobriety, getting clean. Yeah.
Right.
So that was about 28, 29 years old.
But how would you put this in your terms? The support is there for certain reason, for certain agenda, that they want something from you. That's why there is a support. Or sometimes they don't want anything, but they still want to support. There's a different layers of support. However, when it comes to your own dealing, and you realize that, okay, no, this is what I am addicted and I need support. But if I'm not getting that support, you're still seeking that support for someone to manage, or you to manage yourself. What was the more contribution towards efforts made by your surroundings? As you said rightly, environment and surroundings created all this for you. However, these are the only ones. Also, surroundings and environment will also take you out of it. But in terms of your own individual journey, did you think that your contribution was supposed to be more in, rather than just surrounding support, to come out of this slowly or triggerly? What was your...
Absolutely. I knew that I couldn't do it by myself. And I knew that the current people that were around me wasn't enough.
Right.
I needed serious external help outside of my circle, and outside of my people in my close vicinity, if you will. And I should touch on too that I got in trouble with the law a couple times, drug related, and as part of that I had to do some drug courses, so some addiction courses, and I went there and fully was not ready for it. I just went there to tick the box. I went some nights I went there off my face, and I don't know if anybody could tell or not, but I just smiled my way through it and talked my way through it. And later on, especially not so much now, but a few years ago, I looked back at that time and I just felt really disappointed in myself, because that was a really good opportunity for me to nip it in the bud really early. But I didn't. But it did open the idea up for therapy and actually what therapy and counseling can offer.
I just want to touch back on when you said you had quite a successful 20s, and when you joined the band and when you traveled. How did managing your addiction, per se, affect your emotional or physical well-being, within your band members, within your family environment, I assume it's, a lot of pressure on you mentally to keep, because you weren't honest with them. And I would imagine that at the time you probably weren't honest with yourself as much, that it was an addiction or it was a necessity for your life to continue on. I'd just like to touch on how the impact was on you.
I mean, at the time, like I said, when you use, it's really easy to push all that other stuff out of your view, out of your physical space, out of your mental space. It's almost like flicking a switch, and then nothing really matters. How I was feeling 10 minutes ago, how you're feeling right now, the pressure that I'm feeling from everybody, the stares that everybody's giving me because I've lost a lot of weight, where I'm going to get my next fix from, all those sorts of things just wash away. So, like I've had people ask me, well, what did you do when you went to Europe? And it's harder to find meth there. And I said, it might be harder to find meth there, but it's actually really easy to find MDMA or cocaine. So I just swapped. The whole for the time that I was there. Yeah, you just find something else that will work for you, and you just keep going. And then when you get back to New Zealand, you just carry on as you were. Does that answer your question, Beck?
Yeah,
it does. My next point would be with you reached out for the support with therapists and doing drug counseling and those sorts of things. I guess we start with that to try and help us as an individual. But when was the point that you realized that it possibly was a generational sort of patterns, that it didn't come from yourself, it became from an environmental surroundings, and it just became the norm?
That would definitely have been like when I realized it was an addiction and I looked deeper into it, was around my 1920. It was around there where I was like, hang on, this, my whole family, this is completely normal to be drug addicts and alcoholics and Alfano. It's just that's the norm. So it was right back then that I realized there's something deeper going on here. It wasn't until I've started doing deeper individual work, that I've seen and can understand what specific things in my upbringing trigger specific things in my day-to-day now. So and what?
I think where I wanted to go is that, like, was it at any point something that you put on yourself as my addiction is because I'm not good enough, my addiction is because I have nothing to offer, as you say, people only want to be friends with you when you have a vice to offer them. Was it ever at a stage that it became a personal
challenge?
I think for lots of people it does. For me, I fluctuated between that and numerous other things. So sometimes, in my depressive states, I would call them, when I'm feeling not so great about myself, I would use to make myself feel better that I don't have the friends because why don't they like me? Because I lie, or my trust issues or my insecurities, those sorts of things. So I would use for that. There were other times where, my anxiety would be really high and I'd be really nervous and scared or shy or whatever. And so I would use to pick that up. So me personally, I fluctuated between all of them. And that's just, that's a result of, that's an outcome of the different kinds of, and the amount of trauma that I went through. So certain things in life will trigger something inside that will make me react a certain way.
And I guess this is probably a good time to to put light on it, that all addiction is different, and all addiction journeys are different for the individual. And I think, for yourself, it came from an environmental surrounding, and what was normal, or what looked or seemed normal, and just that's the pattern that we all follow. And I really appreciate you touching on that. Like it's not necessarily your full environment, but it comes from trauma. So like trauma is a massive push, or reason for addiction for many people. And I think that we just need to put light that everybody's addiction is different, and everyone's journey will be different, and like you said, the triggers are different for everybody at different stages during your addiction or your journeys.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally support that. It's what's really opened my eyes through my journey of recovery is just how addiction can affect different people in so many different ways from all walks of life. I've been to some addiction groups where people have arrived in their Porsches, come straight from the office, parking up next to that guy who's got 6 kids at home, and he's works 7 days a week to provide for his family, turns up in his high vis shirt, and again, everybody experiences trauma. I think that needs to be normalized too, is that nobody's perfect. Everybody's got some
100%.
trauma, whether it's massive like the stuff that I went through, or it's massive and it's just one particular thing that happened to you that your body has latched onto. Something that I've learned in my own journey too is understanding that trauma, while it resides in here in our thoughts and our memories, it also stores itself in the body. So working your body and getting familiar with your body and understanding your body. And we numb our body, we numb our bodies when we go through addictions, and learning to tap into that can help just release it. I don't know where I was going with that.
No, that's right, because like it's in the little crevices, we're built up by millions and millions of different cells and atoms, and I think that we at some point, sometimes we do forget that it's not just as shallow as our thoughts, or like the physical bruises, or like the sounds that we might be triggered by. It's actually energetically, and sometimes we look over those feelings of anxiousness or feelings of fear, or those little jumps that you're just unsure about, that like deeper down, they're results of the traumas that we've experienced, as subconscious is just sort of reminding us that there's a little bit more work there, and a little bit probably a little bit more damage than we had initially thought, at the time. And I think you're right. If we were to listen to our body a little bit deeper and a little bit sort of more intent, then it'll be easier to find the messages, but that's not so easy.
Exactly.
Did you realize that your addictions, when you realize that, is also restricting your potential that you are capable of, or that you wanted to do, or that you could do, has now restricted once you realize that you are addicted, and that you have looking at the world, or there is no light in front of the tunnel? Did you feel that kind of feeling you had?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's usually in the depressive times, because being an addict, I'm not going to lie, there are lots and lots and plenty of really good times. Lots of really high moments, not just in that way, but there's lots of really great moments. But there's also many down moments, and it's usually in those down moments where you will go through this sort of process and experience these sort of feelings.
Right. Okay. So what would you think about yourself when it comes to addictions? That what's your prime experience or message that you would like to share from your experience that people, whatever addictions they may have or whatever they uncover, the sooner they uncover their addictions or they try to or seek to uncover their addictions rather than looking at that moments, as you said, 99% when you are in that addiction mode, you feel good about it and the moments are good and you feel everything is good. Then you do not realize that how long it's going to last. That's what is the more important key point is are these moments going to be remain forever? Or is it true to be good to be true, as we say? Is it so good that it is true? So from that point of view, what would be your message for the listeners that you can share? The sooner you better, or what's your message?
Look, I feel like many people sit in what we call the pre-contemplation stage. This is where you think that you might have a problem, but you don't want to do anything about it. That's too hard. And so my advice to people is to own it. Own what's going on for you. If you're sad, say you're sad. If you're happy, say you're happy. If you are drinking 2 liters of Coca-Cola every day, admit that you're drinking 2 liters of Coca-Cola every day. If you're smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, admit that you're doing that. That's your first step. It's going, I'm smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. Anybody will be able to tell you that that's not healthy. It's not good for your body. It's not good for your mental health. And then you can move forward from there. The next step is contemplation, is going, shoot, I do have a problem. I do have an issue. I don't know what to do about it. What do I do about it? And then reaching out for help. I think if there's any advice I could give people is to just understand that addiction affects way more people than you realize. And
I think as well, like addiction doesn't just have to finish at, with substances, like with drugs or alcohol. Addictions are, sugars, coffee,
absolutely,
cigarettes.
Yeah.
Like you touched on before, gambling. There is so many different forms of addiction, and I think in society we've sort of normalized gambling. We've normalized, drinking 2 liters of Coke, when you're at school, having smokes, and I think, like alcohol, but it also, to the point of, like when you're going to gym, if you're, being a gym addict, because you're not, like addiction is another way of escape, so it's just,
absolutely,
a form of not actually acknowledging what your body is asking you to at the time. Like you can become numb when you're just training all the time. You can become numb when you're working all the time. It's just another mask to make yourself so busy to not have the time to look at to what
to confront and deal with what's going on there. And I think like even some of the big tech companies like Apple are starting to understand that smartphone devices are a real source of addiction for people around the world, millions. And so they're implementing things like screen time, so that and popping it up on your notifications, so you can see how many hours a day you're spending on specific sites. Even specific apps now are implementing the service where they'll notify you if you've been on it for longer than 3-4 hours a day, because that's not healthy, and we talk about dopamine. We talk about the dopamine effect and what that does to your dopamine levels. And like you're scrolling your phone and you see something that really excites you, blip, blip, there's a little bit of dopamine. You keep scrolling, and you end up on a cycle of constantly looking for content that gives you that those little squirts of dopamine, and that's addiction. That's addiction, So that would be my other advice, is to look into what are the things that you spend excessive amounts of time on. Even work can be an addiction. It can be used as a way to escape the things that are going on in your day-to-day life.
Absolutely agreed.
And then the other thing is I want to encourage people to look at therapy and counseling and support groups as normal. These are normal spaces filled with normal people, run by normal people to try and help people get through what they're going through. And I had a real stigma against support groups and therapy and counseling growing up. I hated the idea of ever going. And now I can't imagine my life without it, because every time I go, I learn a little something new that I can adapt to my life. So yeah, those are the main bits. The last bit of advice I want to share with everybody is how connected the different elements that make up our existence. So in Te Ao Māori, or in Aotearoa, we use a system that was made by Mason Jury, that was developed by Mason Jury, Sir Mason Jury, called Te Whare Tapawha. And Te Whare Tapawha talks about the 4 walls that make up your whare being your whole person. So you've got your, and they're all connected. Each of them are connected. And if one of them is feeling slightly out, it's going to lower the rest, or it's going to affect the way that your house is balanced out. Yeah. So
stability. Yeah.
So we've got taha tinana, which is your physical space. What are the things that you like to do, or what are some things that you can do to make your body feel good? You know, it could be a 10-minute walk, it could be a jog, you could go to the gym for 30 minutes. These sorts of things. Breathing, just not breathing fresh air and going out and breathing fresh air. So there's taha tinana. You've got taha wairua. This is your spiritual side. This could be for those people who practice religion. It could be, you know, reading a chapter. It could be going to church. It could be going and doing karakia in the forest, or whatever practice that helps you feel connected to your spiritual side. Then we've got taha hinengaro. So that's the mental space, your mental realm. And so, you know, things that you could do to feed your mind and feed your brain and grow your brain. Reading books is the first thing that you can do. Meditation, so mindfulness, things like that. There's YouTube videos galore. There's apps, Headspace, things like that you can start to get into to help calm and relax and balance out the mental space that you've got. And what was the other thing I was going to mention about the headspace? Oh, and breath work. So breath work is something else that I've been following for another part. Breath work, I believe, is connected to taha tinana, so the physical and the mental, because you're working on both sides there. So you've got taha tinana. Oh, and then the last, so you've got body, mind, spirit, and then family. Yeah. So feeling connected to your family. What are some ways that you can do to feel connected to your family? This could be going out and having dinner together. This could be meeting up at the beach and just sitting on the beach for an hour. Could be going for a bushwalk. Could be one-on-one time with specific family members and nourishing those relationships. So those are the 4 elements. So I always do a quick check-in with myself, and I go, how am I feeling about my body? You know, what's going on in my body? Is my, you know, I'm in the middle of trying to implement a workout regime, not so much going to the gym, but just like going for daily walks and you know, doing little exercises with my babies. I go, how's my head going, and what sort of headspace am I in? How am I feeling right now? Those sorts of things.
Were these the sort of steps or the processes that you would go through on a daily, or, you know, sort of just in regards to your journey from, you know, becoming sober to now? Are they the steps that you do daily or weekly, or
probably? Oh no, I would say daily, but I don't need to go through all of them daily. Yes. So I might be as an example, I might wake up just grumpy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'll go, well, why am I'll, you know, take myself to the bathroom, look in the mirror and be like, why am I feeling grumpy? Where's this coming from?
Yeah.
And I'll think about it. I'll go, okay, well, I woke up 3 times in the middle of the night because my daughter woke up. So I'm probably lacking sleep. Yeah. And so acknowledging these things and
owning up.
And owning them and going, okay,
owning up. Yeah.
I'm tired.
For yourself though, like you're, you know, like you're a few years into your journey, and it's still you know, like a journey that you're working through. For somebody who is just, you know, they've just acknowledged that they've got an addiction, they've just reached out for some support, what's the advice that you could give to them, you know, in starting the journey of addiction?
Man, yeah, absolutely. What you were talking about before, Beck, the routine. Implementing routine. You know, you're really trying to shift old behaviors, and it's not going to be easy. And so you want to implement a day-to-day routine, and you could make each day up the day before, or you could do the whole week in advance. But having a list of things to do, even on the wall that you can go by and tick off. And so me, when I first started going through this, I had to go through the list multiple times a day, because I'd be going through all sorts of stuff. Oh my gosh, I've got a headache. Why? But oh, that's right, I was addicted for all these years. Okay. And I didn't get much sleep, and I'm on a bit of medication right now. Okay, you know, and so how am I going to make my mind feel better? Am I going to be able to read a book? No. Should I have a nap? Yeah, I should probably have a nap. Try that out. Have a nap. Yeah, I'm feeling a little bit better now, you know? So not only having a daily routine, but having a list of things too that you can use to pick yourself out of it. So, you know, things like going for a walk, things like turning your phone off, you know, making a healthy meal, you know, going and putting your feet on the grass, putting your feet in the beach, in the water at the beach. Real simple things that can.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Yeah.
I was just about to say that too.
Yeah. And as you're saying it, you know, these things are just popping into my head. I guess it would just be the biggest thing would to be open for change. You know, some things might not work that day or that moment in that day. So, you know, being in a space that, you know, things might crumble, but, you know, not getting down on yourself so much about, you know, maybe that meal or that 10-minute nap just didn't help enough, you know, so go for a walk and then have a nap in an hour, you know. So as you're speaking, those things were coming up for me, that, you know, just being flexible is probably
yes,
what I'm
absolutely
for.
being able to adapt, because you know, especially the first 3 months of recovery is the hardest. You're going to have so many ups and downs, and you might even lapse, you might even relapse, you know. And you need to pick yourself back up and start again. That's normal. It's normal to go through that process. But having your plan, going through that, and knowing that it's not going to be perfect. There's going to be things that you need to change.
So looking at your journey from the way you acknowledge, owned up, you took steps, you are recovering still, you're still in that mode, but what would be your thought process now? That do you feel any regrets that you could have taken these steps earlier, for the listeners who may have got, as Beck said, that who have just gotten and acknowledged that they are addicted to certain things, but hearing you might trigger some of them, oh geez, I should have taken this step now. And Paaka says that, okay, he should have taken these steps earlier. There is a regret of certain things, or there is a let go of certain friends, or let go of certain people in your life who didn't support or who didn't thought of supporting, but they were just taking advantage of your vulnerability. And so once you realize that, are there any regrets in your journey?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, I mentioned to you both when I was 19, 20, when I realized I was addicted, and I realized it came from trauma.
Yes.
And I should have done something about it. And I still regret it to this day. You know, like, it's only been in the last 2 years I've been clean off my main vice for 8 years, you know.
Right.
So I
But
still
that
still
in
feel
itself is
regret.
a massive achievement, though. You know,
It is a
I
massive
think
achievement.
I
But
think having regrets, and getting stuck on regrets is probably not the healthiest.
True.
Especially in
Mm.
in this scenario. I think regrets. I don't like the word regrets triggering me. That's why I'm saying this. Because, we
No,
can never. You can't live by regrets, because then
no.
it puts on extra emotion, unnecessary emotions, and energy. I think regret holds such a powerful energy that just doesn't help us in
Yeah,
any
no,
situation.
definitely
I
not.
think,
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
as in, it's definitely, we can get to disappointment. We probably could have acknowledged it earlier or done more about it. And yeah, I'm speaking of my own experience. That's why there's probably triggers there. But I think for myself is that, at the time, I probably wasn't ready. I couldn't find the tools, the energy, the strength to change the situation. But when you do attempt it, I think you have to acknowledge yourself for attempting the change when you do. And in that period of, say, when you should have, where the regret stands to where you are now trying, you have to acknowledge the growth that you've had, the life experiences that you've had, the mental state that you're in. I think there's so many little things that happen in that gap from when we should have to when we are, that we have to acknowledge and also give ourselves a pat on the back for going, yeah, okay, maybe we should have then, but now I've got so much more strength, so much more, tools under my belt that, it's now possibly a better time to.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I agree.
Yeah, I totally agree with you too, Beck. And while you were talking, I mean, I've just come to really acknowledge and own whatever's going on for me. So I'm totally happy to be like, I actually really regret how long I was on after I realized I was addicted. And I tell people this when I'm feeling not so great some days, I'll mention it to someone. I'm feeling just regret that I wasted so much time, and they'll turn around and they'll remind me, bro, you wouldn't be here today without the experience you went through, and the awareness that you have of everything, etc., etc. And just while you were talking, Beck, I feel like I probably could swap the word regret out with disappointment. I'd be happy to do that. Because they essentially kind of acknowledge the same thing. And I'm not trying to take away from the journey that we go through to get to where we are. But yeah, I do have disappointment.
For me, absolutely. For me, the regret I used is not for the regrets that you should be stuck on, but in spite of all those regrets, you have moved on. And people who acknowledge early, own it earlier, they won't have that kind of regrets, but they will only have those unpleasant experiences. But they could turn those unpleasant into pleasant at that very moment if they want to, if they choose to, once they acknowledge it. And with your experiences, that real experience sharing with us today gives a lot of insights that, hey, if Paaka would have done that, or if I would do it in my own time, rather than waiting for things to happen, I can let go things. So you have let go. When you compare losses and gain, there are no losses and gains, but when you lose people, when you have those people at your good times and then you lose, then you regret how she was my best or he was my best friend, but he didn't now last because of this situation. I wish I could have done more and remain, or I could, that regret in that context where I had that regrets, but I moved on and nothing went wrong in terms of what I am today is I have created for myself. So just from that angle for the listeners and for people who are getting into their newly kind of addictions that they have acknowledged and owned up, then for them, it's a good time for them to immediately take certain unpleasant decisions that for them, but good for overall for the society and for themselves in the long run. I was just referring from that point of view would be a good opportunity for people to turn around their own situation by themselves rather than waiting for others to turn for them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, a little bit of that.
Hey, I just remembered the last thing I wanted to encourage you to do, or last bits of advice. I don't know how much longer we've got, but
we got 10 minutes, 5 minutes.
Is that building, and unfortunately for a lot of people, there'll be trauma around this for some people. So it might be a lot harder to do this, but getting comfortable with setting your boundaries. Yeah, so it might be really hard for you to say no to your mum and dad. It might be hard for you to say no to certain friends. It might be hard. You might not even know what to say. Practice saying things like, no, I'm not drinking tonight. Practice saying things like, no, that doesn't work for me. I don't do that. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm gonna have a drink of this. I'm gonna drink some milk. Practice doing that, setting your boundaries and being very clear and not saying sorry. You don't have to be sorry for you putting a boundary to protect yourself. I think that's where a lot of people really struggle, is that if they don't have that supportive environment and they say, oh no, I'm not drinking now, and in return they get something like, oh well, what's wrong with you? Or something like that. It could be anything. Name calling.
I think it's really important, just in general, even if it's not an addiction, boundaries are good, but just to be able to share what we would like for ourselves. Like I'm not drinking at the moment because I'm training, and everyone keeps asking me, let's go out, Mike, and it's like, oh, I'm not drinking. And it's like the first thing it's like, oh, my shout. And I'm like, I have money, but I'm not drinking, like, because I'm focusing on my training. So it's like, as soon as you are able to voice what you want for yourself, I think, it's easier, or you'll find it more often that people will like ease off with, offering. In different scenarios, of course, but like, it's just like, there's nothing wrong with someone else having a drink, someone else going and doing their own own habits and whatnot. But for yourself, I think like you said, you really have to focus on your boundaries and what it is that you want for yourself, and until you are in a place that you can say no when it's in front of you, I think we need to continue to just voicing, and don't be afraid of it. Like, don't be embarrassed of your boundaries, and don't say sorry, but also just let people know what you want for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Not only is it showing respect for yourself, but it also tells the person that and you have strength to be able to ask for what you need. And they might turn around and they might say something not so nice back to you, and then the power is still in your hands. You can say, okay, I would appreciate if you don't offer me anything tonight. And they might turn around and say, I'm gonna offer you. And then you go, all right then, well, I guess I might have to leave. I guess that's that. Have a good night. And you will,
definitely.
That will be confronting for some people, it'll trigger them, and they'll go, oh, well, why aren't they joining me? Are they too good for me? And all sorts of excuses will come up.
And then again, it's somebody else's trigger, not yours, so it's like it. And I think that's probably the next step as well to touch on, is that if you are with friends, or that friends that were your buddies that you did get on it with, you did drink with, once you start your own journey, like, it's a ripple effect. When the friends that are noticing that you're changing your path, that you don't want to be doing the same things, you don't want to be hiding away in the dark rooms anymore, or at the playing pokies every night, because it is something that you don't want to be doing on your own all the time. So it's like, once your friends start to fall off that don't want to do it anymore, it's that ripple effect to encourage your other friends to go, well, maybe there is a different way of living. Maybe we don't need to be outsourcing substances to be fixing the pressures, or the connections that we're trying to create. We can create that without the substance use.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So just turning on that, finally, last, I wanted to ask just on that Beck's last comment. Does addictions should be treated with care in your terms? Because you talked about friends who can influence, you talked about people who can easily get into addicted once you start believing or listening to people when you don't want to. So does you think addictions in the way you see it today, in your experience, should be treated with care by the society, by the agencies, by the support groups, by the community, by your own people and own friends?
Absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely, it should be treated with care. I think not just addictions, but all
All the things, yeah.
mental health, it needs to be taken seriously.
Mm.
And I see a lot of movements around the world where they are starting to challenge the way that things have been done for so long, and they're starting to implement new models of care and new process of change models and all sorts of things like this. And yeah, it needs to be taken seriously, and it needs to be done with care and respect.
Yeah, no, that's cool. No, that was great insight, Paaka. It was wonderful to speak to you and listen to your experiences that you have gone through and still going through. And it's awesome to cover up lots of things that our listeners would listen and think about it, that, okay, it's not the end of the world, addiction. However, it is a reality of the world. However, it is a reality of your own, and you need to own it up. That's the message I take from here. And also there are groups, support groups available that you should be seeking help from. And the sooner and the earlier, if you could do, that would be my message as well in terms of that. But overall, I guess, I think that sharing your own journey also needs courage. And it's just like one way of, doing your things the way humans need to be looked after by each other, by sharing your experiences and caring for each other, so that they don't fall into that what you have fallen into, and they can, even if they fall, they can still learn from something that they are listening to today. So I really appreciate, and it's a great honor and pleasure for me to put this show also with Beck. And Beck is definitely have asked very good, triggered your trigger points, questions that she has. But I think overall, Paaka, I really appreciate it. It was a great insight. And I think addictions is not something that you can hide, and don't put a mask on addictions. Become authentic. And I say the more you become authentic, the more you communicate with your loved ones and your near dear ones, you will not lose them. You will not make them unhappy or unpleasant experiences. You will always be making them proud. And the message I take from here is that you have done so much and you are still doing so much. Raising child, raising family, living with the family, and letting go all the unnecessary, unpleasant things, and still continuing your journey. So I really, really appreciate. And definitely addiction is not something, a very small topic can be turned into or spoken into 20 minutes or 30 minutes, but it's definitely a topic that we could come back and revisit with different layers of help that people can see and take from here. So I leave this simple note that we are all one, and we need to support each other no matter whatever state a human is in. So as I said, like, addiction should be treated with care. That will be the final word and I put it back to Beck to finish it off.
Yeah, thank you so much. So honored and grateful for your time today. And you've opened up so many questions for me. We don't have enough time to talk into it, but I'm extremely grateful for your time. And I guess, like, we do need to stress that the path, addiction and the path to healing, it's not a simple one. It's not an easy journey. But when you put in the time and effort and you have the support, and it's just continuing consistency, is probably a good word, at that you can prove to yourself and to your family that like you can be there. You can there is an end to the struggles and to the traps of addiction that they can bring. So no, I'm so very grateful for your time, Paaka, and yeah.
Thank you so much, guys. It's really been a it's been a pleasure to sit down.
Yeah, you can end with the one positive note, Paaka. I give it to you.
I guess my positive note is that, you know, I'm really happy to talk about my journey now, because I've gone through so many support groups and shared my story with so many people that I've normalized it for me. And so it's really easy to tell people and look people in the eye, strangers in the street, and say, I'm a recovering addict. Yeah, I haven't used it for a few years, but you know, that's been my journey for a lot of my life. And yeah, I think that's a big part of moving forward too, is building that.
Your identity is not just a recovering addict, you know, and that's like, for me, you know, like that, I feel that energy now, like, you know, you are so much more than just a recovering addict, you know. So like as free and as comfortable you are now with sharing that with us, like, you know, I also want to share that with you, that you as an individual have so much more to offer. And, you know, your energy, like, I am radiant, like, with energy from you. Just this conversation today is, you know, like, there is so much more to you than your experiences being a recovering addict, you know. And I think that with your journey that you've been on and with the experiences that you've had, you know, like, I just don't want you to, you know, like, that to be your identity, and there's so much to offer.
I hear you. But I also, you know, there might be a recovering addict in my neighbor. There might be a person who's struggling with addictions, with the person who's walking down the street. And so if me acknowledging my journey, I'm not saying, look, my whole life is about being an ex-addict. Saying, look, I'm a recovering addict. I'm going through some shit. You know, sorry.
No, that's fine. It's
you
fine.
know, just acknowledging it and yeah. But I really appreciate your kind words, Beck. And yeah, I mean, happy to flesh this chord or have this conversation again. We can talk about it again in the near future.
Yeah, I think there is so many more layers that we can, you know, we can unravel with it. It's, you know, again, it's not just as simple as, you know, addiction. You know, there are so many layers, you know, to be, you know, that happen before you have the addiction. So, you know, I think, you know, that's a whole nother podcast series. You're just alone. Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, that's definitely.
Thank you so much for today. Really appreciate your time.
No worries, guys.
Yes, thank you very much, Paaka. Once again, I really appreciate it. It was a great insight for me also to uncover and unravel so many things of addictions. And as I said at the start, like, this is the Freedom of Free Spirited podcast series, which is a well-being of your emotional well-being journey. And addiction is one of the key ingredients of your human journey that could really trigger your emotional well-being and can disturb every single moment. But you can deal with it. You can solve it yourself. You don't have to be saying or stuck in it. So I think I must take that. So once again, it was a great pleasure to talk to you, Paaka, and to come to our show. And with a positive note, we will definitely bring you back. Thank you so much.
Got it, guys. Thank you so much.
much.
All right.
Kia ora.
Take care.
Bye.